Oh, it's another day here at the Comeback Team Studios, and you're watching another episode of the Interesting Times podcast right here on the Bek Lover podcast, where I bring you all the news, commentary, opinions, and analysis. And I could be wrong, I could be right, but I always love to hear from you also. All of you that are watching, make sure you drop a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if you think I'm crazy. In any event, hit that subscribe button. We are growing astronomically. I want to thank all of you. YouTube, Spotify, my channel doesn't even show up. You could type my name in, it doesn't even show up. I mean, I don't know what's going on. But I guess if I was Joe Rogan and Donald Trump, I wouldn't feel that bad either, because they have over 20 million views in less than a day, and they're not even on trending. I just got back from Texas. I'm absolutely exhausted, but I've kept my word. I will put out an episode almost every single day, maybe even 2 a day. Just depends how much interesting news is out there. So if you're tired of, all the other people out there and you want someone to do all the work for you and gather stories from all over the world, not just politics, because I'm tired of it also, make sure you hit that sub, tell your friends, and I just want to thank all of you. I'm extremely viral right now. I've already seen maybe just 10 Instagram accounts that I counted over 10 million, 20 million views on every single platform. My ex, for some reason, formerly known as Twitter, is kind of, it's kind of lagging. I don't know. I do a lot on there also. So make sure you go to BekLover.com or follow me on Instagram at BekLoverNYC or on TikTok or on X. And I do post different content for those platforms. In any event, I'm going to be streaming on Kick and all these other channels shortly, also live all the time. So I hope you're excited. I have an amazing podcast coming out probably tomorrow. And we get into dating and love and religion and spirituality and the end times. So for those of you that like my religious content, you're going to have an amazing episode coming out tomorrow. And I'm still trying to build that bridge between the Christian and the Muslim world, the two largest, believers of the God of Abraham. With that said, why do I always cough once I hit record? It's crazy. The biggest podcast in history, okay? I don't know what kind of records it's broke. Maybe it's too early. But here we are 23 hours ago, and it's up to almost 22 million views of the Joe Rogan Experience, Joe Rogan's podcast with former president, and from what I can tell, the future president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. There's quite a few things I want to talk about. I did watch the entire podcast as I flew back from Texas. I was down in Austin the day that they actually filmed the podcast, and the city is extremely liberal. I did not see any Donald Trump signs anywhere except for these massive billboards that were on the highway connecting Waco, Texas to Austin, Texas, where they showed Trump with the blood coming out of his mouth saying, "Fight, fight, fight," from the attempted assassination attempt. And but Austin is an extremely liberal city. It's basically a bunch of Californians who left their failed state and moved to Texas because they couldn't afford to stay in their garbage, welfare, communist, run by the clown Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi losers. So they leave California and go to the reddest state they could, and they think they're going to bring their nonsense down to Texas. Austin itself, I found it to be awesome. It was such a really cool place. Like, listen, when you're a New Yorker, it's very hard to find any cities that can even compare or even bring any type of energy. Chicago has it a little bit, but again, they're also run like shit. It's very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing in Chicago. For me, the number one city outside of New York is Miami, hands down. But, I'm going to have to give Austin number 2 and Dallas number 3 of places I would live. It would be Florida or Texas, Then after that, I guess we could go to Arizona, and we could also go to Tennessee, Nashville. I wasn't a big fan of Nashville. It's very hard. When you're a New Yorker, you live there your whole life, the energy, the action, it's just very difficult. In any event, Sam Tripoli, an amazing comedian who actually follows me on Instagram, and I follow him. He was on the episode right before Donald Trump. So congratulations to you, Sam Tripoli. Very proud of you. Look forward to doing a podcast with you myself in the future, brother. Tim Dillon, who also follows me, and I'm blessed. I met him in LA at the Laugh Factory. He interviewed, Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. So, there's a lot just in the amount of views that this has gotten, okay? Number one, 22 million views completely destroys the mainstream media. Joe Rogan, you are a hero to free speech, to journalism, to independent journalism. What you have done for the podcast industry, what you're doing for America by having these important discussions, for providing all types of people an opportunity and a chance to speak and share ideas, is truly, to me, the epitome of what the First Amendment is, of what it is to be American, that we can sit at a table, we can have serious conversations, and we can hear each other out, no matter how far across the aisle we might be from one another. I got to say, I was truly moved by this podcast. And what I really appreciated about it was that Joe, he was cursing, man. He stayed true to himself. He didn't try to be someone he wasn't just because he's interviewing probably the most important person he's ever interviewed in the history of interviews on podcasts and the most critical time in American history. But what I found also just amazing was I grew up watching Joe on X Factor, and whoever thought this guy who left the X Factor to go and host the UFC when it really wasn't that popular and he wasn't even getting paid at first. Basically a ringside announcer who, decided to shoot podcasts over a decade ago that were grainy, hard to see him on, using web cameras. And he helped cultivate this industry into what it is now. And whoever would have thought, two guys on television, Joe Rogan and Donald Trump, the host of The Fear Factor, sitting across from the host of The Apprentice, who may very well be the most powerful man in the world once again, at a time where the most powerful nation is quickly degenerating, quickly losing its power, quickly has its world currency status in critical danger. Even if you're on the left, even if you hate Donald Trump, the fact that you can't sit and watch this podcast means you're an asshole. It means you're closed-minded. It means you're not someone that values hearing different opinions and trying to find middle ground. It means you're probably an extremist. Listening to this podcast can't do anything except give you a chance to really hear what Donald Trump has to say without all the bullshit, with the calm and cool, collected approach of Joe Rogan. It was like two guys sitting at a table, having a cup of coffee and talking about life. I really enjoyed it, and it's just hard to hate Donald Trump after watching that podcast. It just really is. It really, really is. I invite you all. I'm going to play a couple clips here, I guess, but I don't want to spend too much time on this because I'm sure everyone's doing reaction videos and you can go and listen to it and all that. But they covered everything from the elections.
The drug standpoint is they wouldn't be able to sell drugs to these people. And this is a fear that a lot of people have.
And the pesticides and things like that on the plants. And what do you think of that?
It's terrible. Well, I think regenerative agriculture, unfortunately,
what do I do?
a box on every corner.
Right, that's right.
If everybody wants food, and we have food deserts, and we have places like Los Angeles where no one's growing anything, and everything has to be shipped in, and it's very difficult to feed that many people. We've created this incredible society where we have these enormous cities, but it's...
And what's crazy, I mean, they got into a lot of very interesting topics. Again, I highly recommend this, and you should really go out there and watch this podcast between Donald Trump and Joe Rogan. Some of the highlights here, Joe asked him about World War III.
I think I had a great relationship with the military, basically, but I didn't like certain people. I would have gotten them out if I thought, if the election was different, I would have fired, all of them quickly. Most of them I did fire.
Like I said, they get into a lot of different
Biden
topics
should have fired
and even talked about JFK, UFOs.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Because how could
One
Joe
of the
Rogan
things
not
I
bring
want to
that
talk
up?
to you about is the JFK files. And one of the things that you said was that if they showed you what they showed me, this was your quote, you wouldn't want people to know it either.
So I opened them up partially. I was met from good people. I mean, good people. People that were well-meaning. Mike Pompeo was one of them. He's a good person. They called me. They said, "Sir, would rather have you not." And I did open them. But I was asked by some people not to open them. There's a Martin Luther King file, too, by the way, that they'd like to see. I don't know if you know, but there is that. But JFK in particular. So they called me, a lot of good people called me, people that that you would find reasonable people. And they asked me not to do it. So I said, well, we'll close it for another time. But if I win, I'm going to open them up. I'm just going to open enough time.
Why didn't you open it up the first time?
Because
what
was
the hesitation, though?
Addresses, people that are still living. There are people that are affected. And there could be some national security reason that I don't have to necessarily know about. But some very good, talented people asked me not to do it. I opened it up, and then they said, would it be possible for us to do that a different day?
How much of it did you read into?
I think it's going to be just fine to open it. Let me put it that way. I think it's fine. It's going to be time. It's a cleansing. It's really a cleansing. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it immediately, almost immediately upon entering office.
Well, the thing, when people look at it.
I think Donald Trump's speaking in code here. Why wouldn't they just release it? Who would be affected? How dark is the truth about what happened? I've said it many times on this show. I think he was the last truly elected president this country ever had. Do with that information as you will. You know exactly what I mean. In any event, this clip right here, somehow I missed this soundbite. I mean, he asked him about the files, and he's like, I'm going to do it immediately. Imagine with all the problems that are in the world, Trump wants to release these files immediately, and it's going to be a cleansing, which means what happened to JFK is extremely dirty, is what it means. Why would it need to be cleansed if no one was involved on the inside or from another country that we consider an ally, maybe, is how dirty this thing is. I don't know. But I can tell you, we are living in interesting times indeed, my friends. God knows what's coming for us. I would want Trump in office just to see those files. Crazy.
From the outside, and you sort of imagine what could be a reason why they would not release those files. It would be there's people that were implicated in the assassination.
Yeah. Well, when there are living people, you generally tend not to want to do it. When people are still living.
Living people that formerly work for the government.
For the government, and living people that were somehow involved in it, and you tend not to do that. But it's time to open them. I can't tell you whether or not they're going to find anything of interest. And I did partially open. I think I've opened 50%, but I was asked not to do it. And I
to me, it's crazy. Why would you only watch 50% of the most impactful assassination probably since Julius Caesar? I mean, if I was a president, that's the first thing I'd want to know. I want to read all the top secret shit right now. I want anything top secret. JFK assassination, MLK assassination, Malcolm X assassination. Okay? If, Mussolini had a pimple on his ass, I want to know. I'm going to read it all if I was president. I find it strange, folks. Drop a comment on what you think about that subject. In any event, Northern Korean troops are definitely being verified fighting on behalf of Russia in Ukraine. There's videos that have been leaked showing them getting supplies and gear. This video alleges North Korean soldiers in Russia preparing for the Ukraine war. So, you can see Asian men getting their backpacks, their sleeping bags. Where are all these guys going? Interesting times indeed. Trump pushes false election claims, weaves from topics during Joe Rogan interview. Of course, the mainstream media is going to say that. I don't think he said anything that wasn't true. I would go watch this episode if I was all of you. Trump earns endorsement from highly respected Muslim leaders in a battleground state. They believe that Trump, if he was in office, this conflict in the Middle East wouldn't be happening. Therefore, the Muslim American community should endorse Trump, even though Trump basically gave all of Israel sovereignty over all their land by moving the American embassy to Jerusalem. Just a little fun fact there for the Muslims. I think for that issue, I don't think the Muslims can trust anybody or believe anyone's going to stop what's been going on for the last 80 years. Okay? So, to me, that was the breaking news. Yeah, I know Iran, by the way, and I do want to cover that. I really starting to feel like Iran and Israel are cooperating, and they're not actually at war. The missiles that are shot into Israel are like fireworks. The Israeli response is nothing like in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza. To me, honestly, I think with the billions of dollars Iran received from the American government, which is de facto the Israeli right hand, I really think if I was a betting man, that regime is doing exactly what Israel wants it to do. I know that sounds crazy, but I really believe it. In any event, there's not much more to talk about on this Saturday night, except that the guy that destroyed our city might be running for mayor again. Well, he wasn't mayor. He was the governor. Could you imagine we have to deal with Andrew Cuomo again? I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on. In any event, I gather all the stories, all the news, everything you need to know to keep you in the know. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll see you on the next episode of the Bek Lover Podcast, where you might learn a thing or two about life, because we live in an interesting time. Interesting time indeed. Your donations, your subscriptions, your love, your comments is greatly appreciated. We're moving forward. I'll have a lot of content coming your way. I'll see you soon.
Bek Lover.